Well, welcome to week 3 of our class. I wanted to post another video this week because the first 2 weeks of our class we spent time doing a self-assessment on our emotional intelligence as well as our strengths using the VIA strengths inventory that you completed. So now what we're going to do, and as you know our class is about theory to practice, so we're going to take the concepts of emotional intelligence and strengths and put those into very specific practices through some field work and actual assignments I'm going to have you do that will span multiple weeks. So what I mean by that, and you're going to see on this week, I've posted first the emotional intelligence field work activity that you're going to do, where you're going to gather data on a person or an organization or a team whom you believe demonstrates 2 of the key concepts of the 15 on the rubric for emotional intelligence. And you can select any 2. I've printed the 2x2 matrix again for you that include the 15 competencies related to the work of Bradbury in our Emotional 2.0 book, but also to the work of Daniel Goleman and many others in emotional intelligence. So the fieldwork assignment will be done at the end of week 4. Then the last 3 multi-week assignments will be completed over the course and have due dates of the end of week 6, the end of week 8, and then of course our final integration paper on week 10. And that will be due along with your development plan and your paper, where you'll have this last assignment integrated into your final plan and paper. So at the end of week 6, you'll have a gratitude paper that you'll write based on the work that I'll be assigning this week. At the end of week 8, you'll have the 3 good things paper due. And that again will start, I encourage you to start this week, but you have to have a minimum of 14 consecutive days in which you're writing 3 good things that happened on that particular day. So again, I want to make clear that the 3 good things you're writing happened within the previous 24 hours. So you don't want to talk about good things that happened over the winter break or holidays that you spent with your family, but things that happened each specific day. And then the last week, we'll be looking at integrating all these pieces and linking those to using your strengths in a new way. And I hope that you have already read, but if you haven't, read the article I've reposted this week on Blackboard by Seligman, which is called Interventions in Optimism. And what you're going to see is the research where they found that for people to build their optimism, engaging in gratitude survey work or gratitude visit work, 3 good things as a daily journal for a minimum of 14 days, and then using your strengths in a new way. So in that article are the descriptions of the 3 activities that you're going to be completing due on weeks 6, 8, and 10. So with that brief overview, again, these are all multi-week assignments. There will be other assignments that will be due on different weeks, but for these 4 particular areas, remember that they span multiple weeks, and that's why I wanted to give you this overview. So let's start with the emotional intelligence fieldwork. I have a rubric that I've placed up there, as well as 3 sample papers. Now, my advice to you would be to look at the sample papers and read those first completely through. And you're going to see there's 3 different ways, or there's more than that, but 3 examples I put up. The first example is about a student who observed her manager at work, and the linkages and the behaviors from her perspective on the emotional intelligence her manager exhibited. The second student paper was focused on a student who she was very impressed by the emotional intelligence exhibited by the people who worked at Lush Cosmetics, which is a place that she's shopped at, and she felt they differentiated themselves in terms of customer service. So she went into the store, did some observations, talked to some of the employees, and then did a more extensive interview with the manager of the store. And she wrote her paper based on that, identifying 2 specific emotional intelligence competencies out of the 15 that are listed on the 2x2 matrix that is posted on Blackboard. The third student actually went back to an organization she had worked at the previous 3 years and interviewed the director of residence assistance at a university and looked at the behaviors that he was exhibiting that were linked to building such a strong team in that organization. And so she went back to a previous job that she had and looked at the emotional intelligence behaviors. Again, all three and other examples for actually gathering specific data on emotional intelligence is the essence of what this fieldwork assignment is about. You'll see that this assignment is due at the end of week 4. It is worth 40 points, and then there's a specific rubric with multiple steps of what you'll be doing. You'll be identifying first an article, not any of the ones that I've posted on Blackboard or an article you previously found. I'd like you to find an article linked to using emotional intelligence in managers, leaders, or teams. And again, you'll see in the sample papers the articles that these students found. And again, you can do a Google Scholar search or a University of Laverne online library search to find articles about emotional intelligence in action, practices that leaders actually take that demonstrate emotional intelligence and how those have been written up in published articles. Then you will actually gather the data. I've listed observational data gathering, you can do interview data gathering, you can look at websites and videos. I've had students who've had positive experiences, for example, at Southwest Airlines or Patagonia, and they've been able to go to those websites and look at information that has been posted by those organizations that are linked to two, at a minimum, of the 15 emotional competencies, emotional intelligence competencies that we have on our 2x2 matrix. And then what you'll do is you'll summarize the data that you've gathered in the second part of the paper. Again, this will be, you'll see on the samples of how to write that part of the paper. And then the last segment is linked directly to the work that you've already been doing in your Warren Bennis summaries. And what this last section is writing developmental actions, behaviors that would allow a person, if, for example, they're looking to develop empathy, the type of actions that can be taken in order to develop, expand, or further refine your ability to demonstrate empathy as you're working with others in teams or as you're managing people and leading organizations. This last segment of the paper is where I really want you to spend some time focusing on defining those behaviors, because this will be linked to your final development plan, but also my experience in working with managers and executives over the previous two decades of my career, where people often struggled. If I need to develop my listening skills, or I need to develop my ability to demonstrate empathy, what do I need to do? What are the behaviors associated with effective listening? How do people show that they're really listening to others? How do they show empathy and really show that they understand the other person's perspectives? And often both of those behaviors, the emotional intelligence behaviors there, are associated with our ability to paraphrase back what we heard the person saying, reflect the emotions as well as the content of what is being said, really demonstrate clarity that I understand your perspective. And there are many behaviors that are associated with that, including, but not limited to, following up based on what the person said when they've given feedback, to show that you've listened to the feedback, to show that then you're creating some of the behavior changes and doing things differently as a result. And all of those things show empathy and the fact that you've really listened to the situation, to the person, to the feedback that you've received. So the emotional intelligence fieldwork summaries for each of you are due at the end of week 4. That will be Monday of the end of week 4 by 8 a.m. posted up onto Blackboard. The next 3 assignments are linked to then the Seligman article on interventions in optimism. And it's really focused on the fact that we all want optimistic leaders to work for. But optimism does not just mean that we accept things at face value and that in a Pollyannish way we believe anything can be done. Optimism means that in setting specific goals, we identify the people who can help us achieve those goals. We express gratitude for those people. We use our strengths to achieve those goals, but we also draw on other people's strengths. And that even though there may be challenges, obstacles, and issues that arise in moving toward those goals, we focus on the good things that are happening and the approaches that we're taking that allow us to continue to sustain momentum. So all of those are related to then the assignments that are due on week 6, week 8, and then of course your final leadership development plan and paper due at the end of week 10. So let's start with the first assignment, which is due at the end of week 6, which is the gratitude visit. What I'd like you to first start thinking about this week is who have, in whatever context, at work, at school, through volunteer work that you're doing, at home in your relationships or with the community work that you do, who has touched me, who's provided me with feedback or given me opportunities or given me support in a way that they've really helped me develop my leadership talent, my skills, my strengths, in a way that if they hadn't been with me or I hadn't worked with them, my development would not have been where it is today. And while you may have said thank you to that person, what I'm going to ask you to do in this assignment, and what you're going to see summarized in the paper on Seligman, is to actually spend time writing a gratitude letter to the person whom you identify. And the letter should express things such as what they did at the time to facilitate your growth and nurture your ability to develop your strengths or develop new skills. Then summarize the impact that still their coaching, their support, their advice has on you today in your current leadership role. So as an example, for the person I wrote my gratitude letter to when I taught this course last term, I talked about, it was a manager I worked with 20 years ago, and we haven't seen each other in about the last 8 years, but we've kept up with each other on LinkedIn. And what I did is I reached out to him, I wrote him a letter, and then had a phone call with him because he lives in another state right now in terms of his career path. And we had a telephone call, and I shared with him what he did to expose me to different client situations. And he brought me along to many meetings in which I was able to observe how he handled not only facilitating positive meetings, but also when the clients were resisting, maybe in some cases being very direct and aggressive in their approach. And I saw how he handled that in terms of his approach to handling conflict, to really show that he's listening to the clients, but doing it in a way that didn't demonstrate that he was angry or he was flustered or he was upset. I gave him feedback about how now I still draw on those skills in the work that I'm doing in the classes that I teach. And I shared with him some examples of what I learned from him in some of the specific client meetings 15 years ago now, and how it still impacts me today, and how I reference him in the examples of the classes that I teach as one of the best mentors that I've ever had. And then I describe specific actions of what I do and the development that I experience. So what I'm going to have you do is write the letter, then actually read the letter or present the letter to the person through, like maybe I did, through a telephone conversation if the person lives far away, or if the person lives locally. I'd like you sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks to actually meet with the person, have lunch, coffee, or just have them over and read the person the letter, describe to them the impact they've made, and then present the person the letter for them to keep. So that's the gratitude visit. The paper that will be due at the end of week 6 is your summary of the experience of writing the letter, expressing your gratitude, and then what you've learned about the importance of gratitude as a leader, as a colleague, as a team member. Because remember, leadership is not about a specific position you hold. It's about the actions that you take in order to make a difference in people's lives, hopefully a sustained difference over the course of development that people have in their careers and in their lives. So you do not need to give me a copy of the gratitude letter. What I'll do is I'll post what needs to be included and a sample gratitude paper another student had written when he took my course last term, so that you can see the general framework of what to describe in the experience. Again, that is not due till the end of week 6, so you have time to think about who you'd like to share your gratitude with, then to write the letter, and then to set up the meeting in order to share the letter. And then finally, what's due for our class is the paper that describes that experience and your willingness and focus on who am I going to do the next gratitude letter with. That'll be what I'll be asking you to do as a summary in the end of your letter, at the end of your paper that's due on week 6. So that's about gratitude and building our strengths and optimism as a leader, as we learned from the readings that you did on Seligman's article, Interventions in Optimism, and the importance of optimism for high-performing leaders. The next assignment will be due at the end of week 8. Now, this is an assignment that you complete individually. I encourage you to begin this week, but again, what you need to have is 14 days, consecutive days, between now and the end of week 8, when the paper is due on 3 good things, where what you'll do at the end of each night, and this would literally be looking at just before you're getting ready to go to bed, have your journal or pages next to you, you write down the 3 good things, and then you're literally going to be going to sleep. The focus on this is to look at just the previous 24 hours of what happened that was good. These could be small things that happened, maybe in a short conversation you had with somebody at work or at home. It could have been a stressful day and you were driving home and you put a song on that you love and that you find inspirational, and that as a result that shifted your perception and that made the drive home less stressful. It could be a project that you've been working on, and on that particular day there was a breakthrough through one of the meetings that you had, and as a result you got more momentum than you'd even hoped would have happened that day. So the good things can be very small things that occurred, or very big things that are breakthroughs. But again, they need to have occurred in that previous 24-hour period. Now, in doing this for 14 days, what you'll see in the article written by Seligman on Interventions in Optimism is that the sustained impact of doing this on our optimism tends to last at least 6 months, what they found in the research. And the longer you do this 3 good things activity, the bigger the impact it has on your optimism and your growth. So again, just like the gratitude visit and the gratitude paper, I will not be asking you to submit the summary of your 3 good things. Whatever you write in your journal is yours and yours to keep, and it's your information. At the end of week 8, I'm going to be asking you to analyze the 3 good things. So you need multiple data sets, obviously, and if you do this more than 14 days, you'll have even more information. And when we get closer to the due date of this assignment, I will give examples of what you need to do and how you need to analyze these 3 good things in order to complete the paper that's due at the end of week 8. Again, the reason for me sharing this now is I'd like you to begin doing that assignment and writing 3 good things as soon as you can. And by the way, I've done this many times. Each time I assign this to my students, I also do it myself. And I've found that it takes about 2 minutes to write down 3 good things. They can literally just be bullet points of what happened that made that day have 3 good elements in it for you, however you define that. So that'll be due again at the end of week 8. And then the final focus is on, from the Seligman article in Interventions in Optimism, using your strengths in a new way. And that will be what you're looking to do for part of your paper as well as your final individual development plan. I am going to be asking that you take your strengths, your VIA strengths from the data you just finished in week 2, and identify 1 or 2 of those strengths that you want to use in a new way or in a different way as you're continuing down your career path, and find ways to be more creative with those strengths. These could include some of the observations and the development ideas you came up with through the work that you did in writing your summaries to the Bennis chapters that I've been assigning as well. You'll see ideas, and I've already observed in some of your papers, focusing on how to work and interact more effectively with my colleagues, and the strength of how that's related to listening, and maybe one of your strengths on teamwork, and the focus on teamwork through one of the VIA strengths from your survey. You could have wanting to push yourself to maybe share more observations in meetings rather than sitting quietly. And you have ideas that you want to share, but you've been a bit hesitant to do that. And if one of your top strengths was curiosity and ingenuity, you might find ways to link that to your strengths and share new ideas or new approaches in those meetings that allow you to demonstrate those via strengths. So in your final development plan, you're going to be looking for ways to use strengths in a new way. And then the other part of your development plan will focus on your emotional intelligence, the data that you submitted in week 1, and identifying 1 or 2 new ways, whether it's your self-awareness, your self-management, your social awareness, or your relationship management, to use your emotional intelligence strengths in a new way as you move forward. And many of you have already done this as you've submitted your Venice chapter summaries of linking it to your emotional intelligence and the work that you're doing to expand, say, your relationship management. So my intention for the emotional intelligence fieldwork assignment that you're going to be working on is for you to identify development actions that you also may use in your final development plan to continue to expand your own emotional intelligence in the areas in which you seek to grow, based on your own current, if you will, strengths as in terms of emotional intelligence, as well as your career path, the current role you have, or the role you aspire to as you look forward. And that will be in week 10. At the end of week 10, your final development plan will be due, along with your final leadership paper. So on that note, if you haven't done so already, I strongly recommend that you look at the sample papers I've posted online for the development plans and final papers for week 10, and you'll see what I'm talking about in terms of the level of detail, in terms of operationalizing what is it you're going to do more of or differently in order to be effective in building on your strengths, expanding your emotional intelligence, and your commitment to your growth in your either your current role or your future career path, wherever that may take you. So if you have any questions, as always, on any of these assignments, again, all 4 of these span multiple weeks, so you may indeed want to look at this video multiple times as the weeks unfold. So the EI fieldwork is due at the end of week 4, the gratitude visit and paper due by the end of week 6, 3 good things from your nightly journaling of 3 good things that happened within the previous 24 hours is due at the end of week 8, and then your final leadership paper and development plan, of course, is due at the end of week 10. So I hope you all have a great week, and I look forward to reading your papers and your discussion board posts as each week unfolds in our class. Take care.